Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So recently, one of my family members has tried to help a person get off crystal meth, and it didn't turn out very well. I, for a while now, have really warned a lot of you to stay away from people who have histories of drug use because of the way in which it rarely turns out good. And what was sad about this particular individual is that my family member tried to really help them. It didn't turn out very well. And when my family member was trying to get them to move their stuff out, they had to follow them around to make sure they didn't steal something, because my family member said that this individual can't help steal. Everywhere they go, they're stealing something, and they have that druggy mentality, because the druggy mentality is steal, use the money to buy drugs, and do whatever you can to buy drugs. And this individual was addicted to crystal meth, and it had started to really take hold of this woman's life, who was on drugs for a while. My family member knew her before she got introduced to crystal meth and said she used to be very productive. She was a homemaker, really had her life together. Then she had a neighbor who was like, hey, let's party, let's have fun, and gave her crystal meth. And everything went downhill from there, because the drug was so just mind altering that it took over her body. If you ever look up pictures of people who use meth, who end up losing their teeth, getting scabs all over because they hallucinate and they scratch themselves. This woman had patches of her hair missing because it's a very dangerous chemical drug, you know? And us in the family were very upset with this particular family member for inviting that person around. That you shouldn't be inviting these people. And this individual, this family member, got mad at me and said, like, you just think all druggies are just beyond the pale and that they don't deserve help. And it's like, what I tried to explain is you're inviting trouble into your life. You have to make sure they don't steal. If they have a relapse and they get high and hallucinate in your home, you have to call the police. Now you have drama, and if you kick them out, they might come back when you're not there, break down your door and jack all your stuff. While you're sleeping, they'll take money out of your wallet. For the first 30 days is very difficult, but certain drugs, crystal meth, crack, heroin, fentanyl, these drugs are like a shadow that hides behind you for the rest of your life and constantly are telling you, like, use me, use me, use me. And it's not something easy to avoid. Weed is way more manageable. Alcohol, you can struggle with it, but it's not as addictive as these chemical-based drugs. It's just quite different. And so, I really want you to know to not risk getting around anyone who is a former drug addict. Just beware. Beware. Because my family member, as I was talking to them, that individual showed up and was banging on the door and knocking on the window and trying to get back in the apartment. And as I was talking to my family member, I said, don't open the door. You don't have to every time someone knocks, you don't have to answer. If they keep banging on the window, you need to call the police. And then that individual sat on the stairs crying, and then trying to bang on the door again, and then swearing and acting erratic. Obviously, this person had a relapse, okay? And so, I was proven right, and the family was proven right. It's not worth it to get involved with letting a person who's trying to get sober into your home because of the drama it entails. You have to send them to a professional facility that can regulate them, check on them, and everything else, and keep them away from your kids, your family. And you can't be too soft on someone who is possessed by a drug, because the drug takes over their brain for quite some time and will always linger in the back there. I know this may sound cruel, but I have so many addicts in my family, and you get your heart broken so many times, you start to learn about what drugs are and what they do to people. Someone in your family who you care about will always let you down if they're a drug user because they love the drug more than they love you. And the drug is something that literally just feels like a chain on the soul. And even when they get sober, they carry the personality traits of their drug life. Okay? And if they get around like other people who are trying to get sober, sometimes they'll relapse. And it's a very difficult process to deal with. All my childhood, I had to deal with addicts. And you hear promise after promise, heartbreak after heartbreak, lie after lie, and you just see this sort of demonic energy that drugs bring about, and how mothers will neglect their babies and really just their bodies and the things they'll do to men for drug money. It really degrades people. Then when they get sober, they have all this trauma because the drugs they push out the memories, and then when they're sober, the memories flood in. They get sad, and then they get tempted, and now they want to go use again. Okay? So you being in the mix of all that is just a heavy, heavy burden. And a drug addict will turn on you on the flip of a dime because they get schizophrenic. One minute they're happy, one minute they're not, one minute they like you, one minute they're crying. The irrationality, the unpredictable behavior is not harmonic and peaceful. So that's why when liberals enable drug use, they're enabling decay that literally ruins people for life. And sure, you can be hopeful all you want. You know, oh, you knew someone who got sober, but then they got sober from heroin and then they went to alcohol and weed. Or they got sober from crack cocaine and now they're drinking beers or drinking wine. What they do is they go from one addiction to the other. And very few will be like, I'm going to be straight edge. And some do, but if they're honest, which some drug addicts are not very honest, they'll tell you how it's a daily struggle. My own mom has to go to 2 meetings a day. She has to go at least 5 days a week to these Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous meetings so that she can stay motivated to not turn back to drugs. Because that's how powerful crack cocaine was for her. She used cocaine, crack cocaine, and alcohol, smoked cigarettes. Okay? And so, when you're dealing, and my dad, he uses a mixture of drugs, and I don't think he'll ever get sober because every time I talk to him about being sober, he gives me a lecture about psychedelics and how drugs are freeing and you can open your pineal gland and they're part of the universe. Like I'm never gonna get through to him to be sober. So when I have to deal with people who are addicts, and how I'll never have a good mom, I'll never have a good father. My grandma, when she was younger, did speed. There was a drug called speed. And then my other grandma was really into wine and marijuana. And I'm not going to dish out everyone's sins, but as a child, you have nobody to be a good role model. And that's why I'm very thankful for the Mormons and the Christians who were good and sober, who were able to give me food, shampoo, conditioner, body wash, clothes, so that I could survive and I could do okay. And that's why I worked from a very young age. My grandpa was a good man, never did anything. But both my grandpas were veterans. They were just very straight edge. So essentially, what I'm trying to get at here is that you need to protect yourself from people who use drugs, and you need to know that a demon can cry, a demon can manipulate. Don't fall for crocodile tears, and be careful. Like when I had my other culinary jobs, I had a coworker who he used to do heroin. He had only been sober for a year. I didn't trust him, Later I found out he tried to steal some of my tips and that he later got fired for stealing parts of the money. Like, he knew the manager code to delete, like, an entree. He would pocket the money, and if the managers aren't checking the void tickets, you're not going to catch that stuff. So he was making a lot of money by knowing how to get around in the computer so he could delete things and keep and pocket that cash. And the scammer mentality that stays with people even after they get sober is something you have to watch out for. Every child who has suffered with a drug addict parent and has had to endure it, and then hears the secular liberal atheists and the occultists fetishize, champion drugs, and say, well, it's all about freedom, it's all about liberty, it's your body, who cares? They're really not thinking about children. And it doesn't surprise me that the liberals don't care about kids, as we see what they're pushing towards hysterectomies, double mastectomies, testosterone, estrogen treatments on minors, that they are pushing things of OnlyFans and drag queen shows and abortions. Like, we can see how the liberals don't really care about the safety and the innocence of children from a religious aspect. So of course it doesn't surprise me that they push now drugs, or they don't want you, and also the fact that they push the sex industry, which literally gets teens into human trafficking and puts them in a very dangerous situation. So we can see by the morality of the secular liberal atheists what they push and how it's led to a lot of problems, and how they call marriage slavery and polygamy evil, but if you want to sell your body to people for money, that's okay. So we can see the backwardness of their morality. So if you hear a liberal get mad at me for telling you to stay away from junkies, I would just tell you, learn from my own trauma, and I'll never get over it. So people say, "Oh, just get over it." No, because if you don't remember it, you'll repeat it. And if you want to be the one in your family to break the chain of drug abuse and alcohol, which alhamdulillah I've done, I never really suffered with anything like that, you have to be strong and firm and identify the mistakes that those people made, and you have to be suspicious. You have to be on guard of people who know how to run game. They know how to hustle you. They know how to manipulate you. Because a drug addict, it's like something happens in their brain where they know they have to coerce you out of money. They gotta milk you for something. They're always looking for something to sell, pawn, or what they can do to you in an intimate way, or even violently, to get money. Okay? So you have to be on guard. But this individual, who my family member tried to help, didn't appreciate it, called her 30 times, was just a nightmare. Just a nightmare. And I was proven right, but it's not the way in which you hope for. Like, don't invite those kind of people around. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. And you can help somebody without having them move into your home. And you have to be on guard these days. It's better to help somebody who's down on their luck, who isn't a drug addict, than to risk opening up your home, your heart, and risking your stress levels to help someone out who's struggling with such a powerful addiction. That's when you have to hand it over to the authorities, and that person has to fix their own life, right? There's a lot of help in America. You can't starve in certain states. There's soup kitchens that run every day. There's tons of EBT programs, EDD, you name it. It's just so many programs. Okay, I mean, there's food banks. You just walk in, get a box of food. There's literally so many programs. But there are some people who just want to relax and get high and chill and wallow in their own delusional thinking. So you can't pull a horse out of the river if it wants to stay in the river. You can pull and tug and yell and whip it, but if it don't want to move, it ain't gonna move, right? Once it comes out of the river itself, it's healed, you can help, but keep your distance. Okay? Because addicts, they can be quite dangerous when they relapse. And you won't expect it because of the way the drug makes them flip on a switch. And it's quite scary when you see someone have a full-blown meltdown when they're high. There's a reason why so many violent offenders were violent, because they were high and hallucinating. And so, be careful. And somebody may have gotten high 6 times and they were chill, but the drug is unpredictable. They can have a bad trip and freak out on you and hurt you. So if you are in a school, you're at your job, somewhere, and a person who is actively using or hangs out with people who are actively using tries to get close to you, never talk about your finances, never say how good your life is, never let them in your home, never let them know where you live, avoid giving them your phone number. You have to protect yourself, because these people are hunters, and they hunt for scams, they hunt for opportunities, they look for loopholes, they look for a gap in your understanding, and they're very smart, because the drug has made them have to be that way, because that craving they have inside for that drug is extremely potent. And some of them can cry on a dime. They can cry, tell you the most fanciest lie, and when you hear it, you're like, what? It's astounding. Trust me. There's been times where people have lied and I've just been shocked. And the betrayal rates that these people do are off the charts. So protect yourself, protect your family, and stay away from addicts. And when you deal with former addicts, be careful, because relapse is very common and you don't want to be around when they relapsed. Be cautious, be aware. Don't believe the bleeding heart liberals. So, well, you should just accept everybody. Don't worry. That's just not how it works. You have to watch out. Protect yourself. No one's going to protect you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you have to put your best foot forward and be wise and make proper decisions and have common sense. So be steadfast and have a good day.